So it starts with knowing who you authentically are. And I have a process I walk through people with that. As far as the intellectual property goes, instead of saying you need a framework, I start with you need principles that you teach.
Yeah.
What is the gold that you share that we can refine a little bit? What are the things that create aha moments? What are the things you say? We just need to excavate the things that you believe so deeply that you teach again and again and again and again. That's tied to who you are, and that's where we start.
Hello, friend, and welcome. I'm Tammy Enfield, brand strategist, marketing expert, and creator of the Candid content framework. Through conversations with creators just like you and sharing stories from brands and thought leaders, we'll harness the power of authenticity and give you the confidence to create content that empowers you and your audience. If you're ready to build a kinder, more empathetic world, then you're in the right place. Welcome to the Candid Content Revolution. You guys are in for a treat today. Macy Robison. There's no N. I hear a lot of people pronounce her name as Robinson. It's Robison. She's so smart. I love talking to her. I've known her since 2019 when I was certified with StoryBrand. She was part of the OG community. She's always just really generous with her knowledge and her strategy ideas and has helped some pretty big thought leaders build their platforms. So I had her on today to talk about how to build a thought leader platform and how important it is to show up as yourself and to do it your way. Show up authentically in what you know to be true and how to communicate that. As I've been defining my personal brand, if you will, over the last 5+ years, really concentrating on it and building the Candid content framework, doing it within the bubble of my own brain has been a unique challenge, not only because, big ideas are my thing and communicating said big ideas can be a bit challenging, especially when you're condensed to a certain character amount or you're trying to get people's attention within a subject line of an email. Like, what way do I communicate best and how can I show up authentically in my own way? Maybe it's not on video, like the previous guest was talking about. Maybe it's written word. My archetype of her resonance framework is a wisdom writer. I can communicate my ideas most thoroughly and with the most resonance, if you will. Like, my energy is probably better felt through the written word than anything else at this point. Maybe podcasting. You guys let me know if audio is good. But, I take the transcripts from these and can come up with some additional written thoughts. So we repurpose it into written word. But I really loved how she broke it down. She gives a ton of examples in terms of different thought leaders, different names that we all know. Mel Robbins, she talks about Amy Porterfield, she talks about James Clear, just to name a few. And then, as always, because it's my podcast, I can get some free consulting. I took her assessment and she read through the results with me live and got my take on it. And it's pretty spot on where I can best communicate my IP. So if you have ideas to share, if you want to create impact in the lives of others. Again, this might be after figuring out who you are and what your core messaging should be. How are you going to build out that framework and teach people, or how are you going to impact people? How are you going to build a platform for yourself? This is the conversation for you. Macy is lovely. You can take the assessment yourself. Check out the show notes. We've got all the links. Enjoy my conversation with Macy. Oh, hi, Macy.
Tammy, it's so good to see you.
So good to see you. I love the opportunity this podcast gives to either connect or reconnect with some of my favorite humans. You happen to be one of them. So tell everyone listening who you are.
So my name is Macy Robison, and Tammy and I have known each other for a long time through a lot of different communities. So I'm excited to have the chance to be here. I help content creators, entrepreneurs, experts really discover their authentic thought leadership style. The world does not need another version of someone else, a copycat of someone else. But people have impact that they want to share with the world. So I work with those people who know they have something powerful to share. They're really tired of trying to either sound like everybody else, every other expert online, or they just like opt out and don't want to do those things at all. I have an approach that combines some diagnostic tools with a system that I call the Resonant Thought Leadership System. So we're really building that authentic authority from who you are instead of starting with tactics and trying to like paste them on
Back into it. Yeah.
who you think you should be. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm in Utah. I'm in Cedar Hills, Utah. I've lived a lot of places, but right now we are in Utah.
What national park are you closest to?
Excellent question. I'm glad you framed it that way. I'm actually right in the middle of the big clusters of national parks.
Okay.
Moab is about 3 hours to the south and east of me, and Zion is about 4 hours due south, 4.5 hours due south. So really, it's fun to go down there. And where I live looks nothing like that. It's all mountains and green. So if you go a couple hours north, you're in like Yellowstone going into Grand Tetons country.
Oh my gosh. My daughter and I, for the past 3 or 4 summers, have taken trips to national parks. Our first ones were Moab and Canyonlands. And then we did the Smoky Mountains.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And then
Totally different.
Yeah. And then last year we did Crater Lake in Oregon.
Awesome. I've never been there. Okay.
And now this year, sadly, she's taking a friend and not me. And they're doing the Tetons in Yellowstone.
She will love it, and you should go to at some point. That's some of my favorite.
I know. I might have to crash her party, but she graduated this year, so she's taking a trip without mom. I don't blame
they've
her.
got to launch at some point.
I know. We've known each other through a couple different communities, story brand builders, all the things. And I do think that you and I come at the same problem with different angles, like we were talking about before, in terms of like, how can we show up as ourselves? I was just talking to a friend the other day about how I don't even want to know how much money I've spent learning frameworks from others to try to make it work for me. Like the amount of investment, if you will, that I've spent learning frameworks, trying to make it work for me. And then ultimately it either something doesn't feel right within it or something goes against a value or, so finally I went and created a couple of my own frameworks, like the Candid content framework, which you're familiar with.
I'm going to stop for just a second. I've spent also a lot of time and money studying this. I've spent a lot of time inside of thought leadership businesses, helping them build their platforms. And I have a really deep understanding to know how things work beneath the surface. So I'm the nerd that like reverse engineers all of these things and why they work and all of that.
Yeah.
And I mean, you remember how geeked out I got when I saw Candid for the first time. Like, it's so good. And it comes from you. And that's why it's so good. Like, I love it so much. And I think that tension you're describing of like, I'm trying to learn these things. I'm trying to, I guess, edify what I'm trying to teach. I'm trying to figure out if there's a framework I can use to make the impact I want to make. I think that's an okay place to start. It's even an okay place to stay if you want to. The analogy I kept coming back to, because it's so unique to me, was singing. I am a singer. I studied musical theater in college. I've taken voice lessons my whole life. And a lot of the understanding that I unlock when I'm listening to someone talk, or like the analogies I'm making, are often related to voice. And I never have leaned into it in my work as a consultant because it felt too glib and it felt like everybody else was saying that. And so I just shied away from it. And I had a coach challenge me to like, well, what would happen if you just went all in on all of these things that you think are nerdy? And one of the things that unlocked was the realization that there are plenty of singers out there, artists out there that have built their careers singing other people's stuff. My favorite example is Kelly Clarkson. Kelly Clarkson became famous on American Idol singing other people's songs. Now, she brought so much uniqueness to those renditions of the songs that they became hers and people associated them with her. Then when she started to go out and tour and record, she was able to create her own music. You get to a point where you do want to create something of your own. But that cover artist lens, I think, is something you can give yourself some grace and some like experience in learning how, sometimes learning what your voice is comes through singing other people's songs. Like I've never been a songwriter, but when I sing, I try to bring myself to it to such a point that people think that maybe I wrote the song. And I've had people say that to me.
Yeah.
And the
I
same
love
thing is
that.
with the
I
thought
love
leadership.
that analogy. I'm big into permission slips. I like that permission slip to
There you
try
go.
on, other. When Addison was growing up and she would run across friends that had maybe changed a little bit, or they weren't getting along quite so well, or maybe there was a fight and somebody said something mean, I always told her, I was like, well, as you're growing up, the beauty of it is you get to try on different clothes. Like you get to try on different types of people you want to become.
Yeah.
And I said, if maybe they were trying on a coat and hopefully, you know, maybe that coat won't work for you. And like, you can try on different types of personalities. I think that's part of the beauty of growing up. So then you get to figure out what you want to be. But I don't think we give ourselves enough grace to try on different things. And using other people's framework is a great way to do that.
Yeah. And, there's attribution when Kelly sings a cover on her talk show. The person who originated the song is always on the screen.
Yeah.
She gives credit where credit's due. So that's part of it. But trying those different frameworks on can teach you how you think, and they can become a part of the overall body of transformational intellectual property that you bring to the problems that you solve.
Yeah.
There are plenty of people who are amazing coaches that coach inside of other people's frameworks. And there are plenty of people that are amazing coaches, consultants, experts that have taken a step back and wanted to express themselves through the things that they teach and the things that they share. But it's not enough to just say, like, be authentic. Like, you need a system to uncover it. And I feel like that's what, as I'm using this on myself, I'm starting to uncover. And it's been really exciting, because the alternatives, I think, to this point have been spend a lot of money and still end up frustrated, or read someone's post and think, I should do that. I should write like that. But when you copy what they do, it feels forced and fake. And so you just stop doing it altogether.
Yeah.
Or like some of those platforms don't feel like a place that is comfortable for you to start building relationships. And you can lean into all the places where you need to build relationships and connection. And that's part of it too. So,
yeah. I can say, I don't know how this was like for you. This would be interesting, but to like pull a framework out of yourself. Like you mentioned a coach. I'm pretty sure I trained to be a coach with both of the organizations. Instead of just like hiring someone to help me with it, I was like, no, I learned how to do it, and then I'm going to do it for myself, which it really was like a 4-year journey of trying to like figure out what I wanted and who I was and the framework itself, and dissecting all of that, just like all by myself. It was so hard. How has it been? How long have you been working on your framework? Actively, I should say. I know it's probably been like bubbling.
Years.
Yeah.
It's been bubbling for years, and actively for the last 6 to 9 months. It felt like everything rushed together at once, which is how I tend to work. And it's been really cool to see. And I think that a lot of the process has been not leaning into some of the, let me back up. Some of the places that we've crossed paths, one of them in particular had a framework for creating frameworks, and it worked really well for some people. And I was carrying into this consulting season that I'm in now, because I'm coming off of a season of working full time inside of a thought leadership organization. And the truth, I guess, that I was bringing to, instead of being the behind the scenes person all the time, like actually stepping up and teaching, which is what my master's degree is education. And I turned 50 and felt compelled to start
using it.
Yeah. Yep. But the core belief was everybody needs a framework, because that was the thing that I could see among the thought leadership platforms I reverse engineered, but I had 2 things that were giving me some like friction. One of them was when I was working with clients developing frameworks. For some of them, it clicked right away. And for others, it didn't click.
Right.
And it felt like we were copying and pasting a system onto who they thought they were. And so we would create an acronym for a framework, but no one remembered it. Or we would try to pull a visual out of, Microsoft Draw, and it didn't quite land, but we had to check that box. And so We just kept it moving. And that never sat well with me.
Yeah.
The other thing that was creating some like mental friction was looking at thought leaders that are successful and trying to reverse engineer what it was. Well, what's the system that underpins all of these
Yeah.
people who are well known for what
What's
they
the
do?
lever? What's the lever they pulled that everybody else can pull? Yep.
Exactly. Like, is there a lever? Is there a process? Is there a thing? And when I got to Mel Robbins, my idea that everybody had to have like a framework, like the story brand script, or the Patrick Lencioni, like Working Genius, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, it broke because Mel does not have a framework like that. And I couldn't figure out like, well, why? Because clearly from the outside, it looks the same. She's talking to a lot of these people. She's in community with a lot of these people. And that's when I realized, okay, it's not a framework like the brand script or a framework like the brand DNA helix that we would talk about in brand builders group. There are categories of transformational intellectual property, and you need to look at them as a collection of what you teach instead of just saying you need a framework stamp and being done, because that doesn't feel authentic. So it starts with knowing who you authentically are. And I have a process I walk through people with that. But as far as the intellectual property goes, instead of saying you need a framework, I start with you need principles that you teach.
Yep.
What is the gold that you share that we can refine a little bit? What are the things that create aha moments? What are the things you say, whether it's your content or someone else's content, doesn't matter at the start. We just need to excavate the things that you believe so deeply that you teach again and again and again and again. That's tied to who you are, and that's where we start. And then from there, I actually just realized, honestly, in the past week, I've been working with one-on-one clients on this, and I recently launched a group accelerator as an experiment. I don't even know if I'm going to keep doing it. Right now, it's working well, but it's uncovered some gaps in my own system. And one of them was I said, okay, there are principles, which are foundational, practices, which are what you do, like actions you take and things that you tell people to do in order to transform. There are processes, which are step-by-step processes you walk people through. They're linear, and if you take a step out, they break. And then there are frameworks, which Candid is a framework because although it helps if you go in order, you can start anywhere inside of Candid.
Yep.
And you just have to complete it. It doesn't matter whether you begin, with the end when you're thinking about, actually, is it you first and then your customer?
Nope, customer first.
Customer and then you. Of course it is. Of course it is. Yeah. What am I thinking? Of course it is. I was trying to like visualize the word in my head and remember which was yours. Anyway, you can start at whichever end you need to. You just have to complete it. And that's more of a framework. So I was looking at my own content and I was revising some things as I've been teaching. And I realized I suck at creating practices. All of the practices that I'd thought of were either things I've never done before. I've never told a client to do that before. And I couldn't come up with any practices that made sense that tied to my own personal principles. But Mel Robbins is an expert at practices. In fact, I would say that's really what she does. She's really good at saying, here's the principle that I believe to be true.
And here's what you can
do. Count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and do it anyway. Say, let them, let me. Give yourself a high five in the mirror. And she's so good at it and it's so sticky. She literally doesn't need to do anything else. She just needs to go talk to people.
Yeah.
And so she uses her voice and she has her podcast and her background is in broadcast journalism, which is so much of her core resonance. But then the things she teaches are the principles and the practices, and that's it. I stink at practices. I am much better at processes and proprietary frameworks. And when I looked at my own work and the things that I'd figured out what I was actually teaching, they were in those categories. And so with that like new freedom to say, oh, we don't have to like linearly check off these boxes. That's actually going to put me back in that.
Well, and do you find, I found when I've been working with clients over the past, like, it's almost like they want to try something on, like we were talking about before. They want to try on their coat. So like, let's try on this personal brand positioning statement. Let's try on these content pillars. Let's try this on. And a lot of times, obviously, it'll evolve as they evolve.
Sure.
And they can sometimes make some really drastic pivots. I was working with one woman who went from B2B to B2C and just was like, that's my pivot. I'm just doing it. But giving clients permission to like, you create this framework or this IP, but you can change it
Of course. Just, I mean,
Like in the very beginning of Candid, the last D was design because I thought like visually it needed to be good. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I like, there's not always design
right,
in a post.
right.
So how can I like, editing that out and seeing what else was true for me and what I
Mhm.
found true for everybody else, but like being able to change it and saying like, that didn't work. Tried that on.
I love that tried that on analogy. And the way place my brain goes is like, oh, it's like singing that song. Like, I'm going to sing this song in public. That did not go well. I cracked on that note. Let me revisit.
Mhm.
Do I need to change the key? Do I need to abandon this song entirely and
Right.
choose something else? And I think permission to evolve through this is really important too.
Yeah.
And that's why I think for me, the tie to watching a musician's career and
Yeah.
equating that with a thought leadership expertise career was so strong because we would never say we don't need another Beyonce. Of course we do. But we won't have an exact Beyonce. We'll have someone
Right.
who wants to start out with their unique voice and create stories and songs that move us.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with thought leadership. We have lots of people teaching similar topics, but there are specific people that I go to for specific things, and they've evolved over the years, just like Beyonce's gone from singing in a girl R&B group to touring around the world singing
Yeah.
country music right now. And Taylor Swift started with country and now is doing the stuff so there's lots of
Yeah.
permission to
Do you
try
think,
on.
do you think when you're trying to copy paste someone else's I don't think that permission existed for me to stray away from it. For me, it was like, well, this is how I have to do it this way because this is the way
Mm,
that's going to make it successful. Where writing my own framework and developing my own, I had more permission to change it. So I don't know.
yeah,
That's just how my brain is very like, I either need to do this like they did it so that I can copy theirs. Like, obviously, they made it easy. Here's your steps. It's got to work for
yeah,
me. But then if something didn't, would lead to more frustration. But
for sure. I
yeah.
think it's the difference between wanting to copy and replicate their success
Yeah.
instead of paying attention to trying something on and deciding if it works for you or not.
Mm-hmm.
There are always things that you can learn from trying something on. Like I have a client that I've had for years. Her name is Levia Jai Jones. She
I've
is,
heard of her.
yep, she's a 4-time New York Times bestselling author.
Uh-huh.
And when I started working with her 8 years ago or so, she had just given a TED Talk, which now has more than 10 million views, but it was getting a ton of traction. She had one book that had hit the New York Times. She's kind of trying to figure out what her next evolution was. So we created a podcast. She's always been really gifted at coming up with an idea and writing it quickly. So she's a wisdom writer in my framework. She's excelled on Twitter. She's also her working genius is invention and tenacity. So she can come up with an idea and do it right away at a really high standard. And it's grown her platform exponentially over the last few years. And her books are obviously where like the core commercialization is for
Mm-hmm.
what she does. And speaking is like pretty connected to that because she's
Yeah.
going out, sharing her words, sharing her voice and what she's written down. And we, a few years ago, wanted to try and give her some product lines and some opportunities to not be on the road so much speaking
Yeah.
and maybe do some passive income. Like, of course, everybody's like, create an online course. And she's actually friends with Amy Porterfield, who excels in this area. And that idea came up, and I was like, well, I've taken Amy's courses. I've spent a lot of money to go through Amy's
Mm-hmm.
courses. I know exactly what to do. So I followed Amy's process with Levy's support. We created a really robust course on how to become an effective public speaker. We got advice from people who had courses out there who told us how to break things up, how to sequence it. My background, I have a master's degree in education. Like I'm good at creating curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And so we created it, we filmed it. She pre-taped all of the videos. It didn't sell very well. And it's made me crazy. So we tried launching it again, different marketing tactics, still didn't sell very well. So we kind of just benched it. In the meantime, I go away and work inside of a thought leadership business. I was at StoryBrand. I've been certified with them since 2017, but I was the director of the certification full time for the last 3 years until very recently. And while I was away doing that, she talks about it on her podcast publicly, but she like fired her whole team, almost shut the whole business down and needed to rebuild. So she just reached out because I've worked with her for so long
Yeah.
and said, I need to sell something. I've had 4 New York Times bestsellers at this point. Like, what do we do? People want me to teach stuff about books. I was like, absolutely, start coaching. And I bet we could do a live coaching cohort around this. So instead of pre-taping, we did it live. We gathered all our ideas. We put it in a sequence, but the delivery shifted. So it was closer to her strengths as a wisdom writer and a speaker, and sold out immediately. And then we ran it again, sold out again with more people, raised the price, brought in a chief strategy officer to run a proper marketing campaign.
Yeah.
And she had the biggest launch she's ever had for any product ever. And again, this is all stuff she's publicly shared on her platforms.
Yeah.
So I'm not divulging anything from a client. But for me to reverse engineer that was really interesting to see. You know, we were trying to copy and paste Amy's success.
Yeah.
And the course was the right way, but we didn't build it from who Lovey is. We built it trying to copy all the tactics, thinking the success would follow. And when we flipped it and said, what we need is a course, but we need to do it in the way that Lovey shows up in what, not only the subject matter, but how it's constructed. Like, we're running an experiment this summer while she's on sabbatical where we are coaching in real time, but we are playing live sessions for like kind of like as watch parties for the education component. And then we're doing live coaching with myself and another person on the team who has a lot of expertise with thought leadership and books. And so we'll see how that goes. I think it will still work. It's not the same as Lovey, but we've got to protect her time and people have got to pay more to work with her. So anyway, all that to say, there's a lot of clues in people's success, but you can't just copy and paste it. You've got to copy, paste, and then do a lot of refinement. To make sure it fits you.
Your story is resonating with me because I too thought I needed a digital course. I've made a few of them. I made one on Candid content. Now, granted, I'm neurodivergent. I'm ADHD, and as soon as something's done, I'm bored with it. So I have found that I don't properly launch shit. I just assume I've built it. Now people will come. Now, as a marketer, obviously I know that's not true, but the ADHD part of me is like, well, that's done. But they're not that fun. Maybe it's because they're not that fun for me to talk about. When I deliver a workshop or go to a speaking event and talk about it in real time, and I'm really good with like in the moment questions. I love brainstorming. I love talking through something. So because we're going to use me as an example, because that's part of why I have this podcast, Macy, so that I can get coaching from people.
Yeah.
I took your assessment to figure out what type of thought, is it a thought leader? What is your assessment? What did I take today?
Here's what you took. So my system has 5 parts. I've mentioned a couple: core resonance, your content, which is your transformational IP. And the third part of what makes the foundation of who you are as a thought leader is your ability to connect with others, your connection strategies. You can connect with people who are potential audience members. You can create relationships with people who will hire you. But that connection runs through everything. And again, realizing that people could have really strong personalities, really strong core resonance, and start connecting with people online. But I would call them an influencer. I wouldn't call them a thought leader. What makes them a thought leader is adding the transformational IP in my mind, in my system. Those 3 things together create a foundation. And so from that foundation, we can build a custom business strategy on top of that foundation that looks like whatever it needs to look like that aligns with you. So that's where your commercialization strategies come in, where you're deciding what to offer, how to offer it, as well as your central platform. Where do people actually find you and build a relationship with you online? And that's why the foundation and then the custom house thing works well for me to explain it as an analogy. Yeah. That's the underpinning system. Yeah. But the way that is expressed looks different depending on who you are. And the quiz that you took today is a starting point for an archetype. Like, what kind of house should we start with? If you want to rent a house and get going, what kind of house is going to be most like you as a thought leader, I guess, to just beat this analogy into the ground. So I have 10 different archetypes.
Which is a lot.
It's a lot. But with those 5 different underpinning systems, the way it sort of rose up as I reverse engineer, it started by reverse engineering a lot of people's platforms. Like, how is James Clear able to sell what feels like billions of books and be on the
Yeah.
New York Times bestseller list, often number one every week.
But I
For the
don't know if I
last
know what he looks like.
5, you don't know what he looks like, and that's by design, because I've heard him say on podcasts, I want my ideas to be famous, not me. You know his name, but you don't know what he looks like. So if you go to his website, his picture's at the very, very bottom, and it's all words. I think he's what I call a principled practitioner. He documents his own experiences and makes them teachable. He's not going to teach you something that he hasn't done himself.
Yeah.
There are other things that are probably at play if he took his test. But I started to look at Brene Brown. Okay, it's all research and storytelling. Or Donald Miller is probably a wisdom writer, just like Lovey is. And as I started to extract all of this, 10 were what rose to the surface in terms of your combination of those 5 things, your core resonance, how you express yourself, all of that. So your test result came back as a wisdom writer.
Which didn't surprise me.
Didn't surprise me either. And then you had research innovator next, which is more like this Brene Brown archetype of someone who translates research into vulnerable storytelling and making the data usable, basically.
Yeah.
And then digital learning architect is someone like Marie Forleo or Amy Porterfield. And it's about the sequencing of content. You're really good. And the reason you love creating the courses was because of the research, because of the writing. You can take a step back and go, here's what someone would need to learn in what order, to make sure this works properly. And I ran another analysis of your results that I'm going to share my screen, which I know podcast listeners won't be able to see, so I'll read it out loud. But, it's not turned on, so I will read it out loud. It's all good. I just wanted you to see it if it was.
Yeah, I do want to see it.
I will also email it to you so that you can look at it. But this is, again, taking these top 3 and kind of ditching the rest, not because they're not important, but because the top 3 probably matter most in terms of where you start. And all of these archetypes feed into clusters, which is a weird science-y thing you don't need to worry about. But you really lead with insight. So Tammy leads with deep reflection and carefully crafted insight. As a wisdom writer, her voice is most powerful when shaped slowly with thoughtfulness and nuance. You talked about how long it took you to come up with Candid, and that's okay. That sounds like it's in alignment with your design, and you hadn't seen this before. You said
no. Yeah.
Her words, whether spoken or written, carry emotional intelligence, which is totally true, layered meaning, and a desire to connect authentically with others. And again, the process I ran this through, it had no information about you, not even your name. It just had these percentages and the information about what those archetypes enjoy. What makes Tammy profile especially compelling is the combination of research innovator and digital learning architect. This pairing signals not only intellectual depth, but a gift for translating complexity into clarity, which is totally true. I was laughing when this came. This is an AI assisted reflection as far as how it's compiled. But I was like, oh my gosh, this feels like when you read your horoscope, sometimes you're like, what is happening is how I felt when I read it on your behalf. This pairing signals not only intellectual depth, but a gift for translating complexity into clarity. She likely thrives when she has time to investigate, organize, and articulate what others sense but can't quite say. Yes.
Oh my God.
I didn't tell it you had a podcast. Her podcast and other content channels are strongest when she brings research into the conversation with real life experiences, which is what you do on your episodes. The presence of transformational guide, which is your 4th one, further suggests that she writes and speaks not just to inform, but to create meaningful change. Her thought leadership becomes most powerful when it both honors data and the deeply personal. So the strategic focus for you as far as this is where we start, where do we do from here? Continue cultivating a written or audio archive that showcases her synthesis of research, reflection, and story, which is what your podcast is. Create signature frameworks or learning experiences that translate your wisdom into transformation for others, which is what you do. Potentially lean into long-form formats like essays, interviews, guided audio that allow nuance and depth to shine, and position yourself as a trusted interpreter of big ideas, someone who doesn't just report on trends, but helps people understand and apply them. Really? Tammy's presence builds through precision, humility, and resonance. Her thought leadership is made for insight-rich environments that reward integrity and care. So I would love to know what your reflection is on that after hearing me just lead out to you.
I'm glad this is recorded so I can take that little snippet and put it on my Add a Girl folder for when I'm not feeling as confident.
And I will email it to you as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. I have been told more times than I can count that I'm a person someone comes to when they don't understand a concept,
Yeah.
so that I can explain it to them in ways that they will understand. And some analogies and storytelling. Addison will tell, like, I'm really good at applying stories to themes or
Yeah.
things that I'm trying to explain.
Well, you already did that for me, like with the trying something on. And that I'm going to use that for my daughter is 14 and going into 9th grade. And
oh my God, it worked so well for her.
I'm thrilled to have that.
Yeah. Obviously, the authenticity piece. I do feel like I've gotten a lot of compliments on how strong the podcast is, like how I sound on a podcast, like my inflections and how I'm deeply interested in whatever I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Some level. The research piece, yes. And I think, like I said before, I get bored really quickly. So if I find something that sticks, I don't continually to over research it.
Right. It's just usable research that you immediately implement and then go from there is how I would put that.
100%. Mm-hmm. No,
and that's where the combination is different from Brene Brown, who like went really deep on shame and authenticity, started teaching it, got some findings, and then actually moved on to the next thing. But her work still exists to help people go through the transformation they need to go through because she has certifications and she has her books and she has other pieces that are part of her platform that make her work go on. So awesome.
So as you're helping, so if that is me on a piece of paper, how do you how would you guide me to make sure that I am showing up authentically in that?
Yeah, that's where we would start in terms of there's a lot of pieces in there that deal with your core resonance, how you show up with your intellectual property. I would want to explore connection strategies. Like I've noticed on LinkedIn, you're doing a lot more with words it seems like it's resonating. For you as a wisdom writer, having things that you actually type out and exist in written form for people to see is a great strategy to test and try on. I think it would be interesting to explore from like marketing is just building relationships. So there's probably some sort of marketing path we would need to explore around how do we guide people if courses are something you want to sell and include and continue, or, you can just reuse the content you've created in other formats. But what do we need to build so that anything you're teaching, anything you're coaching on, sharing feels like you? And how do we build marketing that then guides people your way? One of my favorite books I've read on marketing in a long time is Simple Marketing for Smart People by Billy Broaz and Tiago Forte.
Tiago, add to cart.
Add to cart, legit. Like I've recommended it to a ton of people. It's really short. It's this short little book. Billy is really great at translating why marketing doesn't work for people who have big ideas. We feel like we have to dumb them down to the point that it doesn't make any sense, or we're coercing and it doesn't feel good. And he has a big question in that book, which is, what do people need to believe in order to buy this from me? And it all really starts from there. And he has a couple of frameworks and processes that he walks people through for their messaging. But the thing that was really compelling about the book to me was that there was a built-in case study, which was Tiago Forte. And if you haven't heard of Tiago, he has written a couple books, one of which is called Building a Second Brain, which has been so helpful for people in this age of information overwhelm to have a system to store their knowledge, the things they are researching, the things they want to come back to without having to keep them inside their head. Our brains aren't designed to like hold the level of storage. And organize it so that we can come back to it, but we keep things and then we end up with digital messes everywhere. So he created this system for himself and I've adapted it to myself, but it's a really interesting book. He has the method that he walks people through. He has a membership, but the book was so compelling and it was not selling at all. And he met Billy at a conference and Billy actually had the guts to go up to him and say, your book is amazing, but I know why it's not selling and I think I can help you. And so they started working together and they kind of alternate chapters, like what Billy's doing, how he's helping with the marketing, and what Tiago is experiencing as how he shifts his mindset to invite people into the transformation that his thought leadership provides in a way that he wasn't doing it before. So it's a great book. And I would recommend that to you, which I just did, because I think there's just a different path. We look at all of these different tactics. The other thing that Billy talks about in the book that I think is really smart And StoryBrand sort of leans into this. There are decisions you have to make about your marketing that are at the foundational messaging positioning level. And often when we start with marketing, we start with tactics. And he uses the analogy of saying that's like starting way downstream and starting to force your way upstream. What you need to do is go upstream and make a lot of decisions about your positioning and your messaging and that big question of what do people need to believe in order to buy this from me? As that flows downhill, you can decide what the medium is to get the message out, and then you can decide on tactics. But because there are so many tactics out there, and because every expert I know, every thought leader I know teaches what has worked for them.
Yeah.
When we're talking about core resonance, I usually say your mess has become your medicine, but it's also, your mess has become your message, but it's also your medicine. It's the thing that you're sharing with other people. And
Yeah.
if
I think
I've been, if I've been through a hero's journey and I've become a guide, that's how I want to help people. So it's like we're forcing medicine on everyone all the time.
Right. But
And it
I think
feels that way.
we've had a previous conversation about me and my difficulty organizing I will read that book because it sounds like that, like a big idea, and how do we build content pillars around a big idea and short snips and blah, blah, blah. But one of the things I have written down on a Post-it note is like sometimes the pill that's hardest to swallow is your own. So,
Yes.
and you told me that when I chatted with you, and I was like, oh, because I'm really good at helping people show up. Like that's what I have done and you have done behind the scenes for a very, very long time. And then when it's time that we're ready, you said you hit 50, I'm 45. So like going to be 46 soon. So like ready to start showing up. The baby's graduated and how can I start making more impact? It all of a sudden is like, I hit my face on a freaking wall.
I am
showing
so thrilled you brought this up. Okay. So here's the thing I've learned for myself, and you can take the lesson that you need to take from what I'm about to say.
Okay.
Stepping out from a full-time role has been really scary to go back into consulting. And I have had several opportunities. This is so generous and kind and flattering, but a couple people heard I was leaving StoryBrand and were on the phone immediately. Like, come work for me now.
Come back here.
Which is so nice. And I almost did it in a couple of different instances. And those are great. I can always go back to them if I need to, but I had to kind of take a step back and say, if I don't do this now, I will never do it. And I don't know if I will forgive myself because I have these ideas and they at least need to get out of me. Whatever happens to them from here is great. But the thing that I've discovered is the more I try to apply what I know, and this gets really meta because I'm teaching my own system and I have to use it on myself. So I feel like I'm in like a mental death spiral sometimes when I'm like trying to coach myself.
I always feel that
But I tried to employ coaches. I actually had a voice lesson yesterday. My coach encouraged me to take voice lessons as I was unlocking all of this. And I had a realization that as a singer, you can practice on your own and you should, but you're not really going to understand what your voice sounds like to other people. Because when you're singing, you're hearing all of the internal resonance that your bones and your muscle tension and all of that lay on top of your vocal cords resonating. So if you've ever heard your recorded voice, the simple way to say this, if you've ever heard your recorded voice and recoiled, it's because the resonance that you hear inside your head isn't there. But that's how you sound to other people.
Yeah.
And so as a singer, the best thing I can do is record all of my practicing, my lessons. I have to memorize what it feels like to make a good sound. No one can crawl down my vocal cords and tell me what I'm doing, which as a former tennis coach used to make me crazy when I started teaching voice lessons.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I could just see what you're doing wrong and see the result. But what people hear and what it feels like, you have to figure out how to align. And so not only recording myself to hear what it sounds like to someone else, but having a teacher, it was really interesting. I haven't had a voice lesson in a while. I had one yesterday. And there were a couple things that we unlocked that were just so fascinating of the way I used to sing and talking so much has created some really bad habits and unlearning them. And I would not be able to get to where I'm now at with my singing as quickly without someone to reflect that back to me. So you can do that for yourself. You can ask for that reflection from others. But the point is you've got to take your own medicine and show up as an example of what's possible.
Yeah.
For it really to be resonant. And that's a continuous process.
Well,
The more you know who you are, the more resonant you are, and the more it expands.
Well, and building a personal brand and or becoming an entrepreneur, I have found are the best lessons in
Totally.
development, self-awareness.
Yep.
Like everyone's like, you're so self-aware. It's like, yep, I've been trying to build a personal brand for the last, like trying to like write it out, trying to define it for myself for the last 5 years. I know myself really damn well.
And in service of others, not just like self.
Oh, for sure. Yes. But
right.
When you said that you need to sing it out loud, record it, and play it back, something came up in me in terms of like what we both do for a living. But when I'm reflecting back to someone what I hear in terms of the impact they want to make on the world and what values they want to bring forth, and I call some of those bolder statements, or what we truly believe, like the bold leadership statements, are usually what the algorithm will pick up. Like people will pick up on those. I made a post the other, some of my posts hit really well, some don't. It's always a surprise.
Right.
But one of them was like, we don't need any more thought leaders. We need more doers. Like, I mean, of course we need more thought leaders, but let's actually communicate things in a way that gives someone a way to do it. I'm like really tired of the 50,000 foot level of like, and all the stories of like huge transformations. I was broke and now I'm not, all those stories of huge transformations make people think like, well,
they can't see themselves in it.
They can't see themselves in that. And those transformations don't have to be so big. So those core stories that I can help people see based on a discovery session of like, here's the 4 things you should start with and try it on.
Yep.
Start here, like seeing your own stuff. Maybe it's a video, maybe it's written word. A lot of my clients do video. And once they see it back, you not only gain confidence in like what you're saying and what you're doing, but then you're also living you're taking your own medicine.
Yeah. And I would say too, if you are trying to express yourself in a way that doesn't feel like it works, try another expression mode. That's part of what I walk people through with their core resonance. I have a client right now that was trying to do video, trying to be more visible, quote unquote, more visible. And just like, it wasn't working for her. And she's a wisdom writer and she hasn't journaled in years. So she started journaling and she sent me one of her journal entries the other day as like, and it's ready to publish now. Like, let's go. And sometimes people need to write a book, want to write a book, but they don't resonate as a writer. So great. Say it out loud. Pull your transcripts from podcast episodes that you've been a guest on. Pull your coaching sessions. There's gold in the things that you've said, and we can just make it a written thing. And I think it just is the key to unlock speed and connection in a way that is really exciting. And that's the work that you're doing already with folks. I loved that post. Because I was like, yes, cosign, let's go. Absolutely.
There was a few people that commented like, well, this was nice. And that's what I think I'm good at is the bold, authentic, and your analysis of me in terms of like emotional intelligence and vulnerability and storytelling. Like I'm okay to say the messy. Like I'm okay to talk about the messy middle where some people aren't.
And the thing that's powerful about that is it's a clear signal that cuts through the noise. Years ago, I remember, my first show I was ever in was Annie, and I tried out and I oversang and I almost didn't get cast. I was called back for Annie at the very end, and I practiced the night before and sang so loud to try and compete that I totally blew out my vocal cords and couldn't talk the next day. Luckily, they remembered I was okay as a singer and they cast me. Years later, I went to go see my friends in an opera, and I'd always associated opera with like the Looney Tunes, big fat bald guy whose face gets red and explodes. And I realized halfway through the opera, they weren't using microphones at all. And I didn't feel like they would look like the Looney Tunes character. And as I dug into that, there's an acoustical phenomenon called the singer's formant, where with some technique, if you sing correctly, there's a band of sound waves that the human voice can create as a singer that the orchestra instruments don't have any sound waves in that little band. And so they're not singing over the orchestra, they're cutting through the orchestra with their unique instrument because of how they've trained it. And that's what you can do as a thought leader. And that's what you're doing with that post is you're magnetizing the right people with the way you showed up, with your words, with that clear point of view, with being an example of what's possible. Really great thought leaders and experts know that like a magnet attracts and repels.
Yeah.
And so being brave enough to put stuff like that out there that might repel is the exact thing you need to do if it's not like being contrary for contrary's sake, but it's grounded in who you are. And that's what was so cool about that post to me.
I love it. I'll link it up in the show notes. Maybe it'll go viral.
Let's make it go viral because it should. Viral with the right people, especially.
What's your archetype, Macy?
My archetype is transformational guide.
I'm not surprised by that either.
Yeah. And then I have some experienced facilitator in there, which is what I care most about is guiding people through transformation and understanding what makes that transformation possible.
Is research up there for you?
It's not that high, but it's in there.
Okay. Interesting. How do you, the big question that I've been trying to teach my whole entire career is how to be authentic, which I realized while making the Candid framework that it's so subjective.
Yep.
I can't just say I'm being authentic because most people don't believe me because it doesn't. Right. I mean, there's a, like, if you say, no, this is my authentic self, most people are like, no, it's not. And that's with anybody. It's because their values don't match yours or what you're saying they don't hold as a core value or a truth or a belief. So it's hard to teach authenticity because it's so subjective.
Right.
You can feel when someone is authentic, I think. And it shows up digitally. You can tell when someone is being performative.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell when there's performative vulnerability or if something is too polished.
Yep.
You can tell when someone's like, this is who I am and this is what I care about. What do you think? What do you think that is?
The best word I had to describe it was resonance.
Resonance. And I think a lot of people are starting to describe it that way.
I think that when we can't put words to something, we use music terms, which is where a lot of this started for me.
Okay.
We use resonance as a music word that rang true with me. Mm-hmm. When we don't have words, music is what steps in. And that's why all of this is kind of rooted in my experience as a singer and a musician. I think the best example that I can see out in the public eye right now of what authenticity can feel like if you continue to make the hard choice to show up with your values all the time is actually Cynthia Erivo, actress and singer. She's most well known right now for playing Elphaba in Wicked. Mm-hmm. I have followed her career for years because I'm a musical theater nerd, and I saw her sing the closing number from The Color Purple in the Tonys years ago, and she won the Tony for that performance. And I cry every single time I've seen it multiple times. And she has this core authenticity that she carries with her and continues to work on. And I feel like Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande both have that kind of, which is why they connected so well through making the movie.
Yeah.
And people would joke about the press tour, but I think that's because they're uncomfortable with who they are or uncomfortable watching people show up in the ways that they did. And they were perfectly willing to joke and, as people were teasing them but there you can feel it. And Cynthia was just on Jay Shetty's podcast like maybe 2 weeks ago. And I don't watch everything she consumes because she's been really busy. She just hosted the Tonys. She's got an album. She's got a book coming out. Wicked's coming out later this year. Like Lovey is actually one of her best friends. And I messaged her the other day and said, you need to tell her to sit down. She's making me tired. But she's doing a really good job of showing up authentically in all the spaces she's in. But she was on Jay's podcast and she was talking about going out to perform. And she was performing in a theater that was in the round. And instead of just facing the people that were what would normally be the regular proscenium lip of the stage, she started by making sure she was turning around and visually connecting with all of the people that were everywhere. And she was talking about like, that's what authenticity is. It's our heart to heart and face to face connection. And that takes a lot of work and knowing who you are to show up that way. The other moment that I've seen her show up with courage and authenticity was actually maybe a year ago, 2 years ago. She was nominated for an Oscar for a song she wrote for a movie she was in. And Hollywood Reporter, I think it is, does these like roundtables where they sit down with a group of creators, and they had everyone who was nominated for best song that year. So it was like Dua Lipa. It was the year Barbie came out. It was Dua Lipa, the other girl who wrote the Barbie song. John Batiste was there. Cynthia was there. I can see her face, but Billie Eilish. I was like, I can see her green hair that she used to have, and I can't think of her name. Billie Eilish and Julia Michaels, who is probably a name you haven't heard, but Julia Michaels is one of the most well-decorated songwriters in pop music in history, in terms of the number of number one songs she's written, Grammys she's received. And and they got to kind of the focus on her in the interview, in the roundtable, and the host was reading out all the things that Julia had done. And she was like visibly recoiling. It's interesting to watch. Like all of these things were true. And she was deflecting and recoiling, and like Billie Eilish was like patting her. She's like, no, you've done all these things. And like everybody at the table had worked with her in some capacity.
Yeah.
And Cynthia reached across the table and said, you should be proud of what you've done. You did all of that. And you owning that could let another girl who was you 10 years ago own what she's like. It's okay to say, I'm proud of that. You should be proud of this. And it was this moment. And I've noticed that ever since, when someone compliments her, she says, thank you. I worked hard. And that takes courage. And it's not like saying anything that isn't true. I worked hard. This meant a lot to me. Thank you for acknowledging that. And I think like that is the root of where all of this starts, and people can feel that. And whether or not they receive it is not your business. But if you show up with that kind of open-handed, this is who I am, and I'm sending out a signal, whether you listen or not is up to you, is our decision we get to make as thought leaders, as experts, as people who are trying to make an impact.
Yeah, I like that. I just think authenticity is the cure for so much. It's the cure for apathy. It's the cure for a shitty social media feed. It's like,
I agree.
I think one of the things that made me think of is I went to Glennon Doyle and Abby Wambach, like the
perfect example.
We Can Do Hard Things tour. And she was talking about how big, like visionaries and people who have these big ideas. And this is part of like the challenges to get your heart from here to here, like closing that gap, closing that distance, because you can see how good things can be or how different things can be for somebody, and the time it takes or the effort to like get there or to bring everybody else along with you. It was just a really powerful visual. But
she's uniquely good on that. I've had a chance to be on a couple of calls with her because she's worked with Levy on some things. And she is just that human being everywhere she goes, which is just so authentic. Yeah. And it's not performative at all.
She's one of the first, if I were to say like core stories in terms of giving myself a permission slip to show up, it was.
I love that.
She was one of the leaders in that. Just that back when she was just the mom, like the mommy blogger, calling her kids assholes. Because I was like, oh, my kids can be complete assholes, right? And like just like giving permission to even like think that out loud was.
I love it.
Yeah. But Macy, this has been wonderful.
I love talking to you. This has been so fun for me. Thank you for the invitation.
I learn so much from you all the time. I hope that analogy I gave you was your little ticket.
That and Candid. Like I have so many people who don't understand how to translate this into action.
Yeah.
And your work is the perfect next step for so many of them if that's what they're struggling with. So I love the chance to link arms and help people show up better, man.
Oh, yes. Right? Yes. Where can people find you? You have your own podcast.
I do. I have a podcast called Own Your Impact, where I talk through a lot of the ideas behind all of this. So talk through the system, talk through the archetypes. That's a great place if you want to dig more into these ideas. If you want to get a place to start and a deeper understanding of how to do all of this, that assessment that Tammy took today is one that you can take.
Yep.
Yeah. It's at Macy Robison, ROBISON. There's no N in the middle of my name, ROBISON .com/quiz. And it'll give you a place to start in terms of knowing how you best express your ideas so that you can, give yourself permission to show up in a way that is going to resonate best with folks and that feels like you.
Yeah. I love it. Well, thanks again, Macy. This has been really fun.
Thank you.